Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry Fink. Welcome to this edition of Helping Seniors Television. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, and our entire Helping Seniors crew, welcome to Helping Seniors TV. Our objective is to educate, inform, and connect seniors and those that care about seniors to resources that are going to help them as they navigate an aging plan. And what's really cool about the show today is this is going to apply to a lot of people, almost regardless of age, because our guest today, her name is Cristin Taylor, and she's what they call a public adjuster with the firm of Coastal Claims. Now, this is a term that I really was not familiar with. I didn't know what the term public adjuster is. It sounded like somebody who worked for the government. But the reality is it's a person who works for you when you have a homeowner's claim and you're trying to sort out. And if you've ever been through a homeowner's claim, you know, maybe it went really well for you and congratulations. And maybe you've been through a claim where you actually weren't sure where you stood, because as you know, when they mail you a policy renewal, there's all this fine print. In fact, lately these days, I don't think they really send you the fine print. They say, here's a link, you can click on it and go look for it. And who has the time or even the understanding to be able to do that? So you agree to this policy, and then something comes up, like here we are in Florida. We understand that we get hurricanes. In fact, here in 2022, we've had actually a couple of surprises that came up, and now people need to see what their policy will cover. And sadly, what a terrible time to learn you may not do the things that you want to do. And so one of the things that Cristin does is helps homeowners navigate this whole process. So welcome, Cristin. I'm excited to talk with you about all this. So tell us first, maybe let's just back up. You know, we live on the Space Coast, and I like to say, you know, NASA is home of all these great acronyms. And so we get into all this like tech speak, and maybe we sometimes forget to actually just break it down for somebody and say what it is we're talking about. So we're going to talk about homeowners insurance. So you own a home and you have a policy. Maybe it's paid through your mortgage through an escrow account, or maybe, you know, you paid off your home and now you're paying it directly. But one way or another, you probably have some kind of a homeowner's policy. And in that policy, you're afforded certain protections. But talk a little bit about where the public adjuster comes into navigating what's covered for you under a homeowner's policy.
That's a broad question.
Yeah, sure.
So when you engage someone like a public adjuster like myself, the first thing they're going to do is look at your policy, right, look at your loss that you're claiming and the date of loss, and see what coverage applies to that particular claim item that you have. They'll advise you where you're covered well and where they can pursue the repair dollars for you. And they'll also advise you as to where you're lacking coverage. Mm-hmm. So that's a very hard time for a homeowner to find out that they're lacking coverage in something that they specifically need, but it's good to advise them when you have the opportunity. When we look at that policy, we look for the way that the home policy covers materials, mm-hmm, the way it covers repair versus replacement. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the carriers nowadays are giving what it sounds like a great idea, an option to repair. They're using their own vendors to repair, mm-hmm, things. And it sounds good. It takes some of the hassles off, but then you're somewhat held hostage to their timeline.
Right.
You don't necessarily have control over your own repairs. And most people want to know who's at their house, who's doing the repair, and that they can hold them accountable. So is that part of your policy, option to repair? Another thing is depreciation. That's a huge thing about homeowners may need the advisement of whether they're going to get that depreciation back or whether the carrier is going to hold on to it. And that's all based on the age of your home and the materials in that. Yeah. And then also the other thing would be is how are they going to pay you? Are they going to pay you and your mortgage company? Are they going to pay directly to you? All these things can be very frustrating as you're going through the insurance process, and a public adjuster will help navigate you through each step, each one being somewhat frustrating, but having someone there to guide you is definitely a benefit that you would have to suffer onto yourself without that knowledge or that expert there. So,
we've talked about this a lot on the Helping Seniors as a nonprofit organization. As I mentioned from the outset, we're here to try to help educate, inform, and connect seniors to resources that are going to make a difference for them. One of the things that we have called this, we talk about making a thing called an aging plan, which we euphemistically have been calling getting your ducks in a row. And as we've talked about different things that you want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row about, living in Florida, we understand a hurricane plan. By no way does it mean we want to have a hurricane hit us. We just want to have sort of an idea of how we're going to react if they say it's coming for us. Well, that's the same idea with an aging plan. We want to kind of have a setup so if something is confronting us, we've already kind of thought through it and say, well, if we hit this bump in the road, here's how we're going to go. The corollary to that, as we've been studying this all year, is that we've come up with a kind of a corollary to it, as we say, is don't try this on your own. So one of the problems that we have as homeowners is, and it's funny because we were having this discussion earlier today. I was talking with somebody who's in the Medicare. They're an independent agent for Medicare, and they were talking about how important it is for people to look at not only their current medical situation, which means, what you do with doctors, what you do with prescriptions, but also to project a little bit like what could come up in the next year so that as you look through a myriad of plans, you're finding the one that's going to really help you navigate that. And I remember asking the gentleman, I said, we get all this stuff in the mail about, how to make the correct Medicare selection. We see all this stuff that we can, look up online in an online search. And, there's so many people that are competing for our business. But for us to become an expert in the nuances of Medicare, why would anyone want to take this on themselves when you can talk to a Medicare licensed insurance agent who represents all companies, is familiar? You might do this once a year. They're doing this hundreds of times a year, and they really have a background. And the analogy that I want to come back to and draw here is like, we get an insurance policy in the mail. We pay the bill, or our mortgage company pays the bill. We think we have coverage, and usually the first time that we come to learn that there's going to be a problem is when we call the insurance company to ask about the claim. Could I maybe start right there and say, like, as a public adjuster, somebody has just come through something and they've discovered a real problem in their home. How do you advise them to proceed? Do you want them to call you first? Do you want them to call the insurance company? What is the best way? Because again, the point I want to get to is much like I would say you call your Medicare licensed insurance agent, say, here's what I'm up against. Does my plan help me in this? How does it help me? How does this work in the best possible way for somebody to maybe get the best help they can?
So as you mentioned in the beginning, in the opening, that someone could do this on their own. The process that they want you to follow in the care is to do it on your own. But no claim is just like another. Right. No loss at a property. It may all be water category, but it doesn't evolve in the same way. There's all these different caveats of how things can go differently and the way they can be approached. So when you engage a public adjuster from the beginning, we're going to advise you on each and every step that you can and should or should not make, based on the fact of what your policy or what your carrier allows for in their policy, which is your contract with them. So in knowing that you have an advocate, your public adjuster there to advise you on that, it's a extremely advantageous tool for you to use, because you're not going to misstep. You're not going to be left hanging or not knowing. You're going to have someone available to answer your questions, to find out more information for you, and to break it down so it's digestible and applicable just to your claim. So without that advice, you're kind of, like you mentioned before, you can go looking on the internet, but you're going to get a one-track vision. So when you come to me, I have experts, other team members who I can ask if I haven't come up with this situation. I have an attorney that I can ask of how you would advise them, and without engaging the attorney, other just free advice. Right. And I can look up other cases that I've had and how they've gone. And every carrier is so different. It's not like you're going to get a cookie cutter response. Even one claims handler within a company is different than the other.
Right.
Some are combative, some are friendly, some are kind, some are educated, some are just pressing a button on a computer. There's all different levels of engagement that, why would a homeowner want to burden themselves with all of that when hiring a public adjuster is going to get you to your goal of having your home repaired properly without you having to put in that stress and effort? So to take it from the beginning is to be the best case scenario, which is, I think, why would they want to go it alone?
Right. Well, and even as you were saying that, I was thinking the problem is if you call the insurance company and say, here's my problem, this is what's going on with my house, you are literally at the mercy of whatever they tell you, because I'm assuming if you're like me, you don't really have a whole lot of, maybe you're fortunate you're in the construction trade, but for most of us, we know how to change a light bulb, and it pretty much starts and stops there. And so then you're trying to talk to what you perceive as a real expert who understands the policy that you haven't read, and they're saying, oh, this is not covered. We don't handle this for you, and you're just going to have to find some other way to deal with this. That's a pretty frustrating place for a homeowner to be when they're looking at, damage in their home. And the problem that I guess comes up in that scenario is, as a homeowner, you don't know where you stand. Are you right and the insurance company is wrong? Or are they actually right and you don't really have a claim here because you didn't understand your coverages? So getting together with you at Coastal Claims and having that review surely makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the most important parts of the premise is this is not costly to get in touch with you and have you evaluate where we are on a claim, right? Because it's not like, well, I have to pay you to come and consult with me. We can go over it, and then you can advise me where I stand and how it would make sense to engage your services if that's what makes sense in this case.
Right. And I spend time with the customer, the homeowner, from the get-go, reviewing what their concerns are and making sure that I understand what their goals are.
Right.
And then in that, knowing what their coverage is and advising them how I can or cannot achieve it. If I can't, I will certainly tell them. So all my work is contingent upon their recovery. And without that recovery, my work is of no cost to them. So it benefits me to benefit them.
Right.
And depending on the type of loss it is, it's a 10 to 20% fee based on what we're looking at, what the date of loss is, what the cause of loss is. So we always recover enough to make our fees substantially worth the homeowner's effort in hiring us,
right,
which hopefully that much is minimal. And at the same time, the statistics, and you can look this up, is that people who use public adjusters recover about 747% more than they would by going it alone. And that is a phenomenal number to me, but every time I prove it, the insurance companies are in a business to make a profit, and they watch their bottom line and they pay out what I don't think they necessarily try to undercut the homeowner, but they look for ways to save on their bottom line.
Sure.
So I'm here for the homeowner to make sure that their bottom line, the homeowner's bottom line, is met.
And isn't that really the problem for most of us as homeowners when we get into a damage situation, we're trying to get things back to what we had before the situation happened? We don't really necessarily have the expertise on how to estimate what the thing actually costs. So the insurance company, even if they said, okay, we agree there's a problem, here's our settlement check, and then you often sign the check, and then what if you found out later that wasn't even enough to fix what you were trying to get into?
Yeah, and there are scenarios that now homeowners are exposed to even more because legislation keeps changing in the favor of the carriers, and that is going to be more and more prevalent.
Wow.
So having someone to advise you on understanding what the value of your claim is. And additionally, you're going to find that some people who work on the insurance company side are going to try and confuse the homeowner by talking about line items like, oh, well, you don't need this particular cement on your roof or this mastic on your roof. And the homeowner is going to be like, I don't know. I'm not a roofer.
Right.
So someone who speaks in the same terminology can fight for you on that.
Right.
Some want to talk dollars. Well, you need to know, again, what the value of your loss is.
Right.
And of course, we are there to negotiate on your behalf, but we'll let you know when we think we've hit that limit. And sometimes the homeowner has to decide when they're going to, fold them and when they're going to walk away. Yeah.
I think one of the key questions, do you find this, because you've been doing this now for quite a while, do you find that a lot of times we as homeowners, we don't understand our coverages, or we may think something's covered when it's not, or we may miss something. The insurance company says, oh no, we don't handle that. But it really is.
Yeah. I was given the example earlier that quite a few homeowners during recent storms have found that they know their screen enclosure was covered. They absolutely know it. However, there's a paragraph in there that says it's not covered during wind or hail or hurricane. So that a type of loss excludes that
Wow.
piece of property. And when you go through a Cat 4 storm, how do you
Not lose it.
how can you even imagine that it's not covered? How can you imagine that would be an exclusion? And homeowners are flabbergasted, and you have to explain that to them. And it's not cheap to replace things in modern day.
No, that was another thing I was going to ask you about, is because on so much of this, this type of stuff, we hear about the rise in building material costs, and there's all these nuances. And so again, I kind of go back to this. Why would you want to do this on your own? And especially another point that you brought out is that I think you've contributed articles, because we publish, folks, if you're new to this, on Helping Seniors, we publish on the Helping Seniors website, helpingseniors@brevard.org. We also make the TV shows available on our YouTube channel and also our Facebook page. But we actually publish in the Center of Senior Scene magazine every month. You've contributed articles about things to look out for in your homeowner's policy, because one of the things that you'd made us wise to, that I guess most of us don't really realize, is maybe we've had the same insurance policy through the same agent, through the same insurance company for a number of years, but you said quietly and kind of like in the little detail print, they're making some changes which may be pretty harmful to you, that if you didn't even know were there, you would just gloss past until you actually ran into that.
Yeah, and I think last year we talked about water limits. After your home reaches a certain age, they'll change the amount of limits if you have a water claim.
Right.
And that's a very expensive loss, especially if it's in your kitchen.
Right.
It's tens of thousands, and most limits are 10,000.
Wow.
Or 25,000. The new thing that's coming up with it, I just recently had to settle a claim in little fine print on the second page. It says next year's policy will be actual cash value. So what actual cash value means is if you have a 20-year-old roof, you're going to get the money for a 20-year-old roof. However,
wow.
most of us are expecting to get the money for a brand new roof.
Right.
And be able to replace it, not make up the difference. Well, there's little fine print that will you'll start to see it. And I've had many customer not aware that they have.
Yeah. So that was a question I was going to ask you too, is like, so what do you advise as a homeowner who's trying to be a little bit proactive about this? They get a renewal in the mail. They usually send some sort of a little summary. It's a couple of I call it telephone book paper, thin sheets, and with little fine print. And it says, these are the changes to your policy. Usually we just toss it in the trash can and go on about paying the bill or whatever. But I guess there could be some important stuff in there.
Yeah. And I would think you'd want to look at your most expensive items, your roof. If you have any structures outside that are attached to your house, even your fence, the way your fence is attached to your house can change.
Wow.
So if it's attached through a bolt to the dwelling, or whether it's separated by some kind of a gap, can change. How are those things covered? Those are expensive items to cover.
Right.
Your screen enclosure, those are expensive items. If you have a dock, that can be an expensive item. How are they included or not included? And you can go to your agent and give them some what ifs.
Yeah.
Because I would think that most people, I know I've been guilty of it, when you shop your policy, you look at pricing.
Right.
Right? And you think everything else is hunky-dory. So go to your agent, and if you want a second opinion, a more applicable opinion, a public adjuster could probably tell you where your exposure is for those concerns. Again, your roof, your outbuildings, your dock, your screen enclosure, your fencing, and I think even your water limit would be something to consider.
I wanted to ask you about this because, I was thinking about the analogy of a Medicare insurance agent again. Like if you call the company, you call an insurance company that provides Medicare insurance, I'm not saying that they're not for you. They're just going to say, well, this is what we have to offer you. This is how our deal works for you. And then you have to stand there and kind of compare that by yourself and say, okay, I called this other company. They can give me this and you guys can give me this. And I'm trying to make apples and oranges kind of comparisons. Do you have any suggestions for homeowners when it comes to what's the best way to shop for insurance? Is it better? Like I would almost imagine maybe it's the same as in the Medicare world where it makes sense to talk to an agent who covers a lot of different lines versus calling a company directly, or does that make much of a difference in your experience?
I can't say that I know that question specifically, who is the best one. I just say call more than one person. Yeah. Don't keep going back to the same agent. Not that I don't like your agent. It's just you need different sources. Right. Don't expect to just renew year after year with the same carrier either. Look around, shop, because Florida is a volatile area for law coming up, which I think it's so in favor of the insurance carrier. Yeah. They're going to start coming back in, but then as homeowners, we need to start demanding what we want covered. Otherwise, we're going to have a policy that is just basically a gift to the insurance company, not real coverage.
So again, if somebody is confronted with a loss in their home, you would almost, it sounds to me like you would advocate that maybe even before they call the insurance company, might be worth giving you a call to say, I just ran into this. What should I do?
Before they call the insurance carrier, yes, because if they preface it wrong or say something incorrect, they could create a whole labyrinth of problems. So can I give you an example? Yeah. So in the most recent catastrophe here in Florida, people were saying, oh, my house is flooded. And so they weren't covered for flood. Wow. But what the homeowner meant is that water was coming from the ceiling down and raised and covered their floors, and it was, to a homeowner, it's a flood, right? Right. So when the homeowner said it's flood, they're like, oh, sorry, we don't do flood. And then the homeowner is completely confused. Wow. So if you go into that first phone call and don't preface it right, or don't give information that is, again, in line with your policy, you could really create a problem for yourself. So calling a public adjuster would certainly allow them to assist you in knowing where to go next, how to call it in, how to report it, and what your likely recovery would be at the same time. I feel like it's no cost to the homeowner, right? And potential, a part of our job is to sell our services. So if we haven't earned your business in that first phone call, and you want to do it on your own, that's certainly the choice of the homeowner. Right. But it would make sense to get like the value of a professional expertise involved in it right from the get-go. So then you could almost coach or lead a homeowner through the steps so that they know how to do it. Because I don't know if you're like me, if you're like most people, it's a little intimidating because you don't even necessarily know the right things to ask or the right things to say here. It's like you said, you might say, oh, my house got flooded in the hurricane, when you just meant the ceiling came off and now I've got water everywhere. These are nuanced terms that, again, it's like, don't do this on your own. And again, what you're saying is there's really not a cost to the homeowner to do that exploration for you, even if they ultimately said, I'm going to go this alone. Yeah, I've had many phone calls where I'm like, I don't think I can help you by you hiring me, but here's some advice of how you can go back. Wow. Or someone says, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. I said, okay, well, why don't you go through this first phase on your own and then come to me when the carrier comes back with their estimate, and I'll look it over and I'll advise you. And if I can help you, I'll let you know. If I can help you out with a question, I'll let you know. But if I think it's involved, then I'm going to ask you to hire me for my help. Yeah. I know you, and I've seen you go out of your way to make a difference for homeowners in their cases. And some of them are kind of like very difficult cases. But one of the things that stands out to me is that having that wisdom or that benefit
And then, as you say, even if you go through it and you say, here's where I think we are on this, you're still going to be in a position, most likely, to make the homeowner not feel like there was any actual out-of-pocket cost to them, because you're going to make sure that the recovery, to the best of the, all the parameters, is going to work for them to get repaired, but it's also going to make sure that you guys are paid on the back end once all this works out.
Yeah. The whole process involves getting to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And not having too many bruises on the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes perfect sense.
So if a homeowner is willing to stick it out to take our advice and go the distance with us, we're going to get to where, fortunately for me, I can say 99.9% of the time we've gotten to where we need to be. That 0.01% hasn't closed yet, so I'll get back to you.
It's still going to happen. Well, but that's really the point, right? Is that the success, you finally have somebody who's fighting on your side to make sure that at the very least, the insurance company is treating you fair, and at most is going to be sure that you get the resolution of the problem you're trying to resolve. If somebody wants to get in touch with you at Coastal Claims, what's the best way to do that?
Well, we do have a website, coastalclaims.net. My email is my name, Cristin, at coastalclaims.net. But I'd love for you to call me at 321-537-9180. And I take text messages or phone calls, and I try to get back to people within 24 hours.
Yeah. So let's say that number one more time.
Sure. 321-537-9180.
All right. Well, thank you, Cristin Taylor, public adjuster with Coastal Claims. Good number and name to know. So that's it for this edition of Helping Seniors TV. We'll see you again next time on Helping Seniors TV.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.